Hello everybody. This is a lecture of Ancient Indian Survey, and today we are going to talk about the Vedic age. In this particular age, which ranges from 1200 BC to 600 BC, we are going to look at the people who settled in the northern Indian plains in this time period, and the people who authored the earliest Ved, the Rig Ved, and what were their social organizations, what was the political setup of that time, and what was the impact of these people on the subsequent historical developments of India. Right, so we need to understand that. We're going to look at that briefly. Before going into the actual issue, we need to understand that we had already learned about the Harappan culture. We already know about the decline of the Harappan civilization, which has many theories, which has many arguments, but it is one of the arguments that it was a gradual process of de-urbanization which led to the decline of the urban Harappan mature culture, and it was the people from the villages who came up and settled in these particular urban centers and caused the ruralization of Harappan urban space, and eventually there was a decline of the high time of the Harappan culture. So we all know that. There's another theory that is given. We have already learned that and read about it, about the theory of Aryan invasion. So this is a matter of a debate amongst scholars. Many new researchers have refuted this particular argument. There was a migration that took place from northwestern regions towards northwestern regions of India to the northern plain, but was there a migration or was there a invasion in that sense? That can be questioned, that can be put to critique. So that is the recent development in researches around this particular topic, but no doubt there were a group of people who have been termed Indo-Aryans. We'll come to the specificities of that in a bit. So there were these group of people who had come from outside India and who settled in the northern Indian plains, and these people were the authors of Rig Ved, which is the earliest Ved, right? So this is what we need to understand. It is we need to know that the Rig Vedic traditions, Rig Ved and other mythological books that we have, that we use when we talk about the time period that we are talking about, the Vedic age. We need to know that these texts or these works were earlier only limited to oral transmission. They were present in the form of oral traditions. They used to pass down from generation to generation through oral means, and they were written down much later. It was only in the early first millennium AD that these texts, these oral traditions were jotted down and written down in a proper sense. So before that they were surviving only as oral traditions, yet they have much historical value because there are certain things that we understand from these oral traditions that have come down to us, and we need to critically look at these texts, definitely, and we need to understand, we need to be able to differentiate between the mythological and the historical aspects in these texts, right? So it was only in the early first millennium AD that these oral traditions were penned down and written down, right? And the major important concern, the text that we are concerned with right now when we are talking about this particular time period, is the Rig Ved, right? Who were the people who wrote this particular text? What was the organization? Let's come to that. Okay. It was probably the people speaking the Indo-Aryan languages that entered northwestern India from the Indo-Iranian borderlands, right? This is the idea that is widely accepted amongst scholars, and it was a migration. They came in small numbers, they did not invade, they came in small numbers and kept settling down in the northern Indian regions, right? Before going into any further details, we need to understand one thing. Indo-Aryan is a language label, it's not a racial label, right? We usually understand Indo-Aryans as a racial category, but Indo-Aryans is a language label, not a racial label. We need to understand that if we say properly, we need to say Indo-Aryan speaking people, right? Similarly, Indo-European speaking people, right? So this is the language is the major criteria of classifying people right now. So it's not race but language, people who speak that particular language. We need to understand that, because when humanity is divided, it is divided first racially, and then the second classification is done on the basis of the languages spoken by various sections of human species, right? So Indo-Aryan, when we say Indo-Aryan, when I say Indo-Aryan, you need to understand that Indo-Aryan means the Indo-Aryan speaking people, right? So we need to understand this particular important aspect of understanding the Vedic time, right? Language is obviously a cultural label, right? A group of people speak a particular language, they are categorized as people belonging to that particular language speaking community. Where did these people come from? These people came from two regions in Central Asia. What were these two regions? These two regions were Andronovo culture. The regions in Central Asia are known by these names: Andronovo culture and Bactria Margiana archaeological complex, which will be called BMAC from now on, right? And both these cultures, which were located in regions of Central Asia, these cultures had certain elements of Aryan life and Aryan civilization, which was migrated with the people coming from these regions to India, which migrated with the people to the Indian North Indian plains, right? Let's take certain examples of what were these elements of Aryan culture. For example, from Andronovo culture, there have been found evidences of stock breeding, of use of horses, of use of spoked wheel, of use of cremation, of use of pit dwellings, and of soma drink, which is a very important drink in the Aryan culture. From BMAC culture, we have domestic horses that are found in that particular region, chariots are found in that particular region, and swastika motif. The motif of swastika is found in that particular region. So these were the areas in Central Asia where the Indo-Aryan speaking people resided. When they were in this particular region of these two regions of Central Asia, they were known as Indo-Iranians, right? Because there were two set of people that originated from that particular set of people who were there in Central Asian regions of Andronovo and BMAC. Let's go over it again to make it a bit more clearer. So there are these two regions in Central Asia by the name of Andronovo culture and BMAC, right? And there are certain people residing in these two regions of Central Asia. These people are known as Indo-Iranians. Again, a language label, right? These Indo-Iranians then migrated to certain regions. The people who came to North Indian plains are known as Indo-Aryans, and the people who went to Iran are known as Iranians. Clear? So this we need to understand, right? So Indo-Iranians were the people who were there in these two regions of Central Asia, and we've already talked about the various Aryan traditions that and Aryan culture that flourished in these particular regions, right? Further, we need to understand that because these people had a same place of origin, that is why there are many similarities that are found between Zend-Avesta and the Rigvedic text, because Avesta is the text of the Iranians who migrated from these two regions in Central Asia, and Rigved is the text of Indo-Aryans who came to North India, right? So this is a brief overview of the people and where they came from and what were the cultures that they brought with them. Now let's just briefly look at the issue of the antiquity of Rig Veda. How old is Rig Veda? And historians and scholars date the Rig Vedic text on the basis of the language. They look at the development of the language and the peculiarities of the language, and on that basis they try to date it, right? And there is one particular evidence of Proto-Indo-Aryan language in Syria, which has a which helps us in dating the Rig Veda, right? So we see that the language that is found in that particular Syrian record is more archaic than the Sanskrit of Rig Veda, right? And we know the date of that particular Syrian record, right? That Syrian record was 14th century BC, right? So there is a record which is in Syria, which has Proto-Indo-Aryan language, which is a predecessor of the Rig Vedic Sanskrit, and the date of that particular record is around, the composition of that particular record is around 14th century BC, right? Even if we say, right, that it is already established that that particular Syrian record has a Proto-Indo-Aryan language, which is the language from which eventually the Sanskrit of the Rig Vedic text evolved. If we say that maybe it was within a short period of time from that Syrian record that the Sanskrit of the Rig Veda developed, even then the Rig Vedic text cannot be older than the second century, second millennium BC, right? It is 1400 or 14th century BC in which we have found that particular Syrian record which has Proto-Indo-Aryan language, and from that Proto-Indo-Aryan language this Rig Vedic Sanskrit has evolved. So obviously the 14th century BC date is older than the development of Rig Vedic Sanskrit, right? So Rig Veda and the Sanskrit of Rig Veda is newer than the 14th century BC. So this helps us in establishing the date and the antiquity of the development of the Rig Veda, and we understand that the Rig Vedic text cannot be older than this particular date. So it cannot be older than second millennium BC, right? This is established. Further, apart from Rig Veda, there are also other texts that were composed, for example Brahmanas, and obviously we know that there are 4 Vedas, not one Veda, there are 4 Veda. The Rig Veda is the oldest, then we have Sam Veda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda, right? These are the 4 Rig Vedic, these are the 4 Vedic texts that are there. Rig Veda is the oldest, and then eventually the 3 other Vedas were developed. Apart from this corpus of literature containing the Vedic texts, there are certain complementary and supplementary texts to these Vedas, right? What are these? These are the Samhitas. Samhitas is a collection of hymns, right? And then there are the Brahmanas. Brahmanas are details of the rituals. Then we have Upanishads and Aryanakas. These are philosophical discourses, right? So Vedic corpus is there, of which Rig Veda is the oldest. Then we have 3 other Vedas, and associated with each Veda is a complementary texts, which include the Samhita section, the Brahmanas, the Upanishads, the Aryanakas. So all these are they're a part of the Vedic corpus or Vedic literature, right? Further, we also we have placed the date of the Rig Veda. We have understood the corpus of the Vedic literature, and we have also looked at the people who came to northern Indian plains with this particular text, and where did they come from, right? We've already looked at these things. Now we'll look at the information that has been derived from the Rigvedic text, right? It gives us information of geographical nature, because we need to understand where these people are coming from, and what is the physical world that they inhabit, right? So there are references to the places which can be associated with eastern Afghanistan, right, to Punjab, to Swat Valley, to Indo-Gangetic plain, right, and to the Sapta Sindhu region, as we call it, right? Seven rivers, right? The land of seven rivers, 5 and 2 Ganga and Yamuna, right? Apart from that, there's also mention of the river Yamuna as the twin of Ganga, and Satluj in association of the Bias river. So there is a geographical expanse of North India, North Indian region, which seems to be reflected in the texts of Rig Veda. Further, there seem to be, these people seem to be pastoralists. There was already certain elements of farming that was there in the Harappan culture. Cultivation had already begun. There was already certain deforestation that seems to have been done by the Harappan people, and the authors of Rig Veda seem to be pastoralists, and also they used to practice certain agricultural practices. And most importantly, the iron artifacts are now known to these people, right? The iron is known to these people, and they are using these iron artifacts to further their agricultural needs and to further their agricultural endeavors. Earlier in the Harappan culture, we know Harappan was a Bronze Age culture, and iron was not known there, but in the Rigvedic culture, in the Vedic period that we are talking about, iron is known, right? Now comes the most important part of the Rigvedic tradition that has somehow passed down to us even in present times, right? That is the classification and social differentiation as started under the Rigvedic traditions. It is understood that the people who were migrating, it's a very old established argument that people who were coming from northwestern plains were fair in color, and people who were inhabiting the Indian peninsula and the northern Indian plains, the people who were aboriginals in these regions, were darker in color, and that is why there is the use of term Arya Varna and Dasa Varna, right? These terms are there in Rigvedic text. But certain scholars in recent times, like Professor Romila Thapar, have argued that the color might have been used as only symbolic, the term color, because Varna is the term that is used in the Rigvedic text, and Varna literally means color, and Professor Thapar argues that color might have been only a symbolic term to express the differences, because the people who were migrating from northwestern plains had belonged to a completely different culture, and the people who belonged to the aboriginal people who were aboriginal Indians had a completely different culture, and sometimes they have also been called the voiceless people, because probably they did not know any language, or they did not speak the language of the invaders, because Rig Veda is the text which is which we are using to understand the history of the time, and it is the text composed by the people who are coming. So it is the text written by the Indo-Aryans, and it is from their perspective that we are looking at things, right? Nevertheless, there was a difference between the people migrating and the people already inhabiting the northern Indian plains, right? And there was a sort of animosity and quite a bit of trouble that was there. It is argued that the Aryans both feared and fought with the Dasas who are the people inhabiting the northern Indian plains. Why? Because Dasas had a lot of wealth, and that wealth was specially in the form of cattle. And when a society is a pastoral society, cattle is the biggest wealth that there can be. So there was a lot of struggle, there was a lot of tussle that went on between the Aryans and the Dasas, and there were also Panis who are referred to as cattle lifters. So these are the various terms that we find in Rig Veda, and these are the terms because of which we understand that there was a tribal conflict that there was a conflict that went on between the people who came from outside and the people who were inhabiting these particular spaces of northern Indian plains. Right, now what we are left with is we need to understand various social aspects and various features of the society and polity of Vedic culture and the early Vedic period that we are talking about right now. We have briefly looked at certain things that that are important, and of the features we are just going to briefly look at a few. There are certain features that are there. For example, the most important feature is the idea of tribal chiefdom that we find in the early Vedic period, right? In this particular period, there seem to be various tribes, and there seems to be an authority whose powers are similar to that of a later period king, but there also seem to be a power sharing mechanism that is there, because the king seems to have been elected through assemblies, through tribal gatherings which are known as samiti, and these references are found in Rig Veda, right? Evidence of other samitis and other committees, other tribal assemblies are also found in the text. And what are those other tribal assemblies? They are known by the name of Sabha, Samiti, Gana, Vidhata. So all these terms are used to refer to various tribal assemblies that are there, and which reflects that there was a system of discussion, and there was no form of dominant autonomous rule was not there. The king was elected, and the king was there were these assemblies that existed, right? Further, there were various officers who were serving the king. Two very important ones that come up in the text are the Purohit and the Senani. These two seem to be very important officers. Senani is considered to be useful in regards to the army and maintenance of army, and Purohita is maintaining the other aspects of administration. It is understood, and obviously this administration is of a very primitive nature, because society is still in the developing phase at this particular point of time, right? And there seems to be no clear system of taxation that we find, because Purohita is responsible for collection of taxes and other administrative details, and there seems to be no clear demarcation or clear reference to taxes being collected. It is understood by scholars that probably people used to give bali, or a particular section of their earnings to the Rajan, to the king, and obviously there were spoils of wars that were there. If there was any war, there were things that were collected, and those spoils of wars were distributed in the Vedic assemblies that we have already mentioned, right? And there also seems to be no evidence of a standing army being maintained by the ruler. So this is the very basic element of social and political setup of the Vedic period that we need to understand. Apart from that, obviously there were since there were tribal affiliations, there were tribal associations, so obviously these tribes that were there obviously had tribal conflicts that were there, right? And we know of the 5 tribes in which these Indo-Aryans were divided, and these tribes are known as Panchajana, right? And the Bharata was one of the tribes, Tritsu was another tribe, Tristu was another tribe. So these were the two tribes of the Aryans who belonged to those 5 tribes in which the Aryans were divided, right? And there was a conflict that was there amongst these tribes, and there's a report of a battle known as Battle of 10 Kings, which was fought between the Bharata clan and a host of 10 rulers or 10 chiefs. It was fought on a river Parushini, which is associated with the river Ravi, and in this particular Battle of 10 Kings, the Bharata clan emerged victorious, and amongst the defeated clan, the most important one was, amongst the defeated tribes, the most important one was the Purus, with whom the Bharata clan collaborated, and they formed a new tribe by the name of Kurus, and Kurus along with the Panchalas became the ruler of the upper Gangetic basin and the and the northern Indian plains. So these are the references that we find of various tribal tussles amongst various clans or sub divisions of tribes that are there in the time of early Vedic period. And Bharata tribe is obviously the clan, Bharata clan is obviously the important clan, because it is after it that the name of the Indian subcontinent has been, India has been called Bharata Varsha because of the name of the clan Bharata, right? So these were the tribal conflicts that are observed in the early Vedic period. Apart from that, we'll just briefly look at the economic setup, that is the agricultural setup, the social differentiation, and the religious organization of the Vedic period, right? Amongst when we talk about the economic aspect, cattle rearing and agriculture are the main points and the main areas where these Aryans are focused upon, right? They had knowledge of certain advanced tools to conduct agricultural processes. For example, they had the knowledge of plowshare, they had the knowledge of sowing, harvesting, threshing, and they were also pastoralist in that sense, and most of their battles were fought over cattle. The battles of the early Vedic period were fought over cattle, and that is obviously the reason why the divinity of a cow becomes important, and has its roots in this particular pastoralist traditions of the early Vedic times, right? And we know, for example, the term for war in the early Vedic times was Gavishti, which means searching for cows. So the importance of cattle in a pastoralist society was immense, and hence the battles and the tussles were on cattle, because they were the chief source of income, right? They were the treasure in a sense. So this was there, and obviously they had some superior tools to conduct agriculture in a better manner, and obviously there were certain artisans that are also mentioned in the Rig Vedic texts, and these include carpenters, chariot makers, weavers, leather workers, potters, right? So this is the economic brief economic overview of the Rig Vedic people, or the people who were authors of the Rig Vedic text. Now comes the important part, the part of social differentiation. We have already briefly looked at that, at the use of the term Varna, which is there in the Rig Vedic texts, where we know that the Varna is the term used for color, and there were certain differences culturally maybe physically in the appearances of, or in the practices of the Aryans and the Aboriginals, and it was because of these differences that they were termed as Aryavarna and Dasavarna. And over a period of time there was a process of oppression of the Dasavarna that developed, after the invasion, or after the what would you say, after the establishment of the Aryans in the northern Indian plains. Over a period of time, it was not all of a sudden that the Indo-Aryans came and suddenly they imposed the four Varna system. The four Varna system was not there. So it developed over a period of time, it evolved over a period of time, and it was only because of the economic differences, because of the discrepancies in the share of the war booty, in the discrepancies in the share of agricultural surplus, how it was distributed. So there were these economic differences that were created because of unequal distribution of agricultural surplus and war booty, which led to the development of economic inequalities, which eventually perpetuated the social inequalities, right? And this led to the creation of the three classes: initially the priests, the warriors, and the common people. Eventually the fourth division, called the Shudras, were added, right? It was. And finally we are going to talk about the religious aspect of the early Rigvedic times, and we are going to conclude with this. The people of the Rigvedic times, they had certain gods and had certain idea of gods, and there were certain natural forces which were overwhelming for these people, and these natural forces were then associated with the with divinity, and they looked at those natural forces which they could not control or manipulate as higher divine elements, because since it is still a primitive stage of the development of human consciousness and human thought, right? So there were certain natural forces which were personified, looked at as human beings, and then they were worshipped. But there were three important gods that the Rigvedic people knew. One of them was Indra, who was the warlord and who was also the god of rain, right? So Indra was one of the gods. Another god which was of much significance was Agni, again an element which human beings were in awe of in the earlier times, because fire is something that is an overwhelming force for human beings. And this also has a similarity with the Avestan fire worshipping people. Probably they had this idea of worshipping Agni or worshipping fire from a very early stage, because both the people who were migrating, both the sections of people who were migrating to Iran and to the Indian subcontinent, they both had this element of worshipping fire. Further, the third important god which is of relevance for the early Rigvedic people is Varuna, right? And which is the god of upholding natural order, and it is understood that anything that happens in the world is a reflection of the Varuna's ideas and Varuna's desires. So these are the three major important deities of Rigvedic times: Indra, Agni, and Varuna. And there were also other smaller gods and goddesses that were there. For example, Saraswati river is seen as a goddess. Aditi and Usha are seen as goddesses representing dawn and the coming of new day and light. So these are the various religious elements that were there in the